Hello everyone and welcome to another video. As you know, in our latest installments here on Viking Views, we have been talking about the disaster that is Wizards of the Coast right now and their announcement to the changes that they are going to make to the OGL 1.0A in the OGL 1.1 that was leaked earlier this year at the end of the previous year, and how it has affected them, and now they are opening themselves for a discussion with the community. We are talking about fans and creators alike, but there seems to be still something not quite right with this new announcement from this week. So without any further ado, let's dive into it. On January the 18th, Wizards of the Coast released through their D&D Beyond website an announcement entitled A Working Conversation about the Open Game License OGL, and it reads as follows. Quote, "Hi, I'm Kyle Brink, the executive producer on D&D. It's my team that makes the game we all play." Alright, hello Kyle! Hello Kyle! But let me tell you something, Kyle! It's nice that you try to be familiar, or that you try to convey this sense of familiarity. Oh yeah, we are with you, we are siding with you, but it's really inappropriate. You don't really have to do it. Let's continue. D&D has been a huge part of my life long before I worked at Wizards, and will be for a long time after I'm done. My mission and that of the entire D&D team is to help bring everyone the creative joy and lifelong friendships that D&D has given us. Doesn't look like it, but let's move on. These past days and weeks have been incredibly tough for everyone, you don't say. As players, fans and stewards of the game, we can't and we won't let things continue like this. I am here today to talk about a path forward. First though, let me start with an apology. We are sorry, we got it wrong. Now, this is a step into the right direction for Wizards of the Coast. Now, is it too little too late? Only time will tell, but let me tell you something. In this, I am going to go ahead and I'm going to say that this is just a load of nothing burger. That's what it is. It's completely void, it's empty, it has nothing whatsoever. So this is pretty much the only step that Wizards has taken so far in trying to recover the good faith and trust of the fan base, and also, of course, that of the creators, that of the people behind a third-party publishers and all that. And I think that that is not going to be enough, and we're going to see why by continuing our reading of this. Our language and requirements in the draft OGL were disrupted to creators and not in support of our core goals of protecting and cultivating an inclusive play environment and limiting the OGL to TTRPGs. Then we compounded things by being silent for too long. We had fans and creators when more frequent and clear communications could have prevented so much of this. Yeah, that was because you were caught red-handed. Now, you are talking about this thing being a draft once again, and I am going to address that right here and now, because this is not a draft, and you know it. We all know it, actually. A draft is not sent with contracts to be signed. It is not sent with an ultimatum that you have to sign it within the first following 5 business days, and certainly it does not come with an NDA, because what you want is for this to be spread all over the world, or as many people as can talk about it and discuss it, so that you can have as much feedback as possible to correct the draft. This was not a draft, and you know it. You are now calling it that so that you don't get involved into legal issues. Yes, I think that, even though I am not very familiar with that, and I am not familiar with legal terminology. But I also think that you are doing it to try to save face in front of the community. Let's continue here. Starting now, we are going to do this a better way. More open and transparent with our entire community of creators, with the time to iterate, to get feedback, to improve. Then start by calling this what it really is. And also stop trying to pretend that this is an entirely different thing, and also that you were not attempting to change the OGL for your greedy purposes. And I'm not talking about you, Kyle. I'm talking about Wizards of the Coast as an entire entity. The article continues, quote, "If this sounds familiar, it's because it's how we do it for the game itself. So let's do it that way for the OGL too. We'll listen to you and then we will share with you what we've heard, much like we do in our Unearthed Arcana and 1D&D playtests. This will be a robust conversation before we release any future version of the OGL." Now, I am going to stop here again because, yes, sure enough, they have some surveys there, but the surveys are designed in such a way that they get the answers that they want, not what you want to say. And even if there are open questions, those open questions are really not reviewed by anyone over at Wizards that is in charge of creating new rules or looking at the game or anything. So Kyle's team is not really paying attention to that. Let's continue with this announcement. Here's what to expect. 1. On or before Friday, January the 20th, we'll share new proposed OGL documentation for your review and feedback, much as we do with playtest materials. Now, I'm going to stop here also because this was issued, as I told you, January the 18th. That's a Wednesday. And even though this video might appear on a Thursday or maybe early Friday, you have only 2 days before they release anything. For how long are they going to be receiving feedback? When do they expect to have their new OGL already completed? Those are things that are not quite specific here. And that also tells me, be wary of this announcement because it might mean that they are going to try some shenanigans in there with the survey or maybe with the feedback. So be careful with those things also if you pretend to read this and get some information on how they pretend to work on this thing. Number 2, after you review the proposed OGL, you will be able to fill out a quick survey, much like Unearthed Arcana playtest feedback surveys. It will ask you specific questions about the document and include open form fields to share any other feedback you have. 3. The survey will remain open for at least 2 weeks, you have it there, and will give you advance notice before it closes so that everyone who wants to participate can complete the survey. Then we will complete, analyze, react to, and present back what we had from you. So it's 2 weeks only for this survey to be there. And then how long it is going to take for them to analyze all this feedback, it doesn't say there. But 2 weeks, you only have 2 weeks to make your voices heard. Now, what is going to happen to all those that already cancelled their D&D Beyond subscriptions? Are they going to be able to answer the survey too? Is it going to be opened? Or do you have to create an account in order to answer this survey? That's something also important. In that case, and following that, I don't reckon that 2 weeks is enough time for all that they want to do or that they pretend to do. But let's move on for the time being. Finally, you deserve some stability and clarity. We are committed to giving creators both input into and room to prepare for any update to the OGL. Also, there's a ton of stuff that isn't going to be affected by an OGL update. So today, right now, we'll lay out all the areas that this conversation won't touch. Any changes to the OGL will have no impact on at least these creative efforts. Your video content, whether you are a commentator, streaming, podcaster, live playcast member, or other video creator on platforms like YouTube and Twitch and TikTok, you have always been covered by the Wizards fan content policy. The OGL doesn't and won't touch any of this. Now, this is a topic in itself. The Wizards fan content policy is an entirely different beast, and that requires even its own video. So we're not going to dive into that. So we're going to skip this point for the moment, and we're going to go with the other points. Your accessories for your own content. No changes to the OGL will affect your ability to sell minis, novels, apparel, dice, and other items related to your creations, characters, and worlds. Now, that is something that nobody really talked about. What they were talking about was what's his ability through the new OGL to claim these licenses, to get them back for them, and then use these things that you created for their own purposes and also for their own gain without having to even acknowledge that means giving credit to the people that actually made all this stuff, all these creations. So that was the thing, and you are not addressing that, at least not in what we have read so far. Now, the next one says, non-published works, for instance, contracted services. You use the OGL if you want to publish your works that reference 5th edition content through the SRD. That means commission work, paid DM services, consulting, and so on aren't affected by the OGL. I didn't know that anyone complained about that when the OGL 1.1 leaked, but that is also something that is not even considered in the OGL 1.0a, so I do not know why they are bringing this up, but okay, let's continue. VTT content. Any updates to the OGL will still allow any creator to publish content on VTTs and will still allow VTT publishers to use OGL content on their platform. DM's Guild content. The content you release on DM's Guild is published under a community content agreement with Dungeon Masters Guild. This is not changing. Your OGL 1.0a content. None will impact any content you have published under OGL 1.0a. That will always be licensed under OGL 1.a. Now I want to draw attention to this thing, first of all as a linguist, because my job is to understand nuance and also to understand the structures that are being used in a message to convey it. And also because if you understand that, you can also grasp any hidden messages that are there, and I reckon that here we have something like that, and that's why I want to address it. If you pay attention to the first part of this statement, the first sentence reads, "None will impact any content you have published under the OGL 1.0a." That structure there is a present perfect. That means that they are talking about past content, past creations. What about the new creations? I mean, you have to be very careful when you address this to D&D players and the community at large. You are talking about people that are, always involved in heated debates about the interpretation of rules and all that. And they know how to seek for details. And this detail here is telling me that everything that the OGL 1.0a allowed for is going to still be there and it's going to be protected, which was part of the OGL 1.1 when they mentioned that past and present projects should be registered. Alright, so you don't have to register anymore your past content, that's okay. But what will happen with OGL 1.0a? That is something that so far, and we are just missing 2 points before we finish with this statement, so far has not been addressed at all. So is the OGL 1.0 going to be deauthorized, or are you going to keep it and just write some addenda or something like that to protect, as you claimed in the previous announcement, against the use of the OGL for NFTs and bigoted content and all those things that you mentioned before? That is something that is not addressed here. It has not been mentioned, and by omission, once again, Wizards of the Coast is lying to the face of all the community. Whether you are talking about fans or content creators, everyone is getting lied on thanks to WotC, once again, using the language in such a way that seems like, oh yeah, we are on your side, but it doesn't really look like that, eh? If you analyze it, it doesn't really look like that. Next point. Your revenue. There will be no royalty or financial reporting requirements. Alright? That might also lead to their tiers, the tier division that they had, and that might be scratched altogether. So that might be another step forward, but it's still too vague and ambiguous. And the last point, your ownership of your content. You will continue to own your content with no license back requirements. That's all from me for now. You will hear again from us on or before Friday as described above. And we look forward to the conversation. Kyle Brink, executive producer, Dungeons & Dragons, blah blah blah. So, this thing here, alright? So it seems like they are doing this in good faith, but it also reads as, yeah, well, Not quite much. The survey might be a trick, might be a trap, and certainly that point where it addresses the OGL 1.0a, that is a tricky part. So what is it, WotC? Sure enough, you apologized to the community for doing something quite despicable because those measures were draconian. But at the same time, you are not really addressing the issue. And the issue is, are you going to deauthorize the OGL 1.0a? And also, the only thing that the fandom wants, and the community at large, is that you add that the OGL 1.0a is irrevocable, that it has to stay like that forever. I mean, even Ryan Dancy, who helped create the OGL back in 2000, went into the comments and wrote this quote: "You must clearly state that you will not deauthorize or revoke version 1.0a of the OGL. Not wiggle room, not nuance. Do it now." And that is what should happen in reality. That is the core of the situation, that they are not addressing that, and that's what the fandom, the community, wants them to do. That they say the OGL 1.0a is not going to be touched at all. If they want to create a new OGL for their open D&D, that's fine. But let the original OGL 1.0a still be there. Do not revoke it. And let people just decide. They don't want to do that because they know that that might mean a similar disaster to what happened to 4E. And that also indirectly, or more like directly, to the creation of Pathfinder from Paizo. Now, Paizo has done it once again in similar circumstances, and they have released their own OGL called Orc. And many people, many other third-party publishers have joined that effort. That seems to be the way going forward. And many people have decided to exactly go that way and completely ignore anything and everything that Wizards turns out. They have cancelled subscriptions in the thousands, and they have decided that this is not the game that they want to play anymore. That is why Wizards is trying to do all this, to try to save face. But it seems like at the end of the day, what they want to do is to boost their own open D&D with a new OGL, of course, but at the same time, they know that if they allow the original OGL to stand, many people are going to flock that way, they are going to go that direction, and they are going to completely ignore Open D&D, and that is also a huge loss for them because they have spent money on trying to digitalize D&D and to monetize it, as Cynthia Williams stated, in a much proper way, quote unquote, of course. That is going to once again blow on their faces, and we just have to wait to see what's going to happen with this. As for now, let's see what happens on Friday the 20th. I don't expect anything positive, but let's keep ourselves informed, and you can count on me to inform you here with my Viking views. Let me know your opinion down below in the comments. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next time.